Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sorry to be a little rushed today. We're in the middle of a vote. I can never tell you when they're going to organize votes around here, but I can assure you it'll be around the same time I have something I have to go do. So, but I think I can sort of summarize what I wanted to share with you today in the limited time that we have. There's a couple things at play, and that is that first, here in our own nation, I think we are learning a hard and difficult lesson that no society, no matter how advanced your economy may be, how technologically advanced you may be, how stable your democracy and your system of government may be, no nation can be stronger than its culture and its communities, and at its core, its families. There is no replacement for the family. Human beings were born and created for the purpose of being raised in families and by parents who instill values at a young age. And it's a difficult task. And in many cases, it used to be 18 years. Now it takes 22 or 23 or 25. But nonetheless, we play an important role. The family is the most important government in our country and in any society. The family is the first school that a child will ever attend. And in the absence of that, or in the absence of that stability, everything else begins to break down. Laws can tell you what is legal. Laws cannot tell you what is good or bad, what is right or wrong. It can simply tell you what is legal or illegal. But there are many things that are legal but are wrong. There are many things that may not be a crime but are immoral. And all of that, and what holds a nation together, and ultimately what makes democracy possible and our republic possible, is a citizenry of people who share a strong moral conviction and a strong commitment to truth, to unmovable truths that are not dependent upon public opinion or changes in the broader culture led by small minorities. And so I think anytime we have a chance, whether it's in school choice or respect for religious liberty or what have you, to empower parents and families in the role they play in their children's lives, to find, for example, a setting where you want your children to be educated. One of the, I think, most significant advances that we've seen in Florida, and I see it play out every single day, has been the school choice movement. Today, it is not the ability of parents to choose where their kids will be educated in a place where their culture and their values and their belief systems are reinforced rather than undermined, is critical. So it's not simply about what you are learning in the classroom. It is about those values that you learn them. And I always tell people, and I think it's particularly true for young men, if you know how to show up on time, that's like 70% of life. If you can just get up in the morning and show up time where you're supposed to be, if you can learn that life is not perfect, that we will never live in a utopia, that in life you will have challenges, you will have difficulties that you will have to overcome, that none of us are promised a perfect role or the perfect life, that learning that resilience is so critical to success in life. That's a value. You can't teach that out of a book. It has to be modeled and it has to be reinforced. And so whether it's school choice or respect for the communities and empowering communities and parents and families and religious groups to be able to instill these values are critical, not just for the health of our country, but for the future of our nation. Embedded in all of this, of course, is the troubling images I thought I'd never see. To be frank with you, I thought I would never live in my lifetime to see protesters in the streets of American cities chanting "Death to America." But we witnessed that just a few days ago in Dearborn, Michigan, and just yesterday here in the halls of this Capitol. And we're a pluralistic society. People have an ability to make their decisions on public policy and so forth. But I find it deeply troubling that we live in a nation where I wouldn't say it's a majority, but a significant and loud minority, and frankly, in many cases, influential minority, are openly advocating on behalf of terrorist organizations. And that's what these are. These are evil terrorist organizations that desire death and destruction. When people chant things like "from the river to the sea," which is thrown around these days as like a phrase, what it basically means is a Middle East in which there are no Jews from the river to the sea. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about the eradication of a nation state and its character as a Jewish nation. And that's the enemy that Israel faces. It is the most difficult time in the modern history, probably an inflection point in the history of the Jewish nation, because as bad as the situation has been in Gaza with what Hamas did on the 7th of October, 6 months ago now, the hostages it took, the abuses and crimes it committed, not enough attention is being paid to what's happening in the north, to the fact that today there are between 80 and 90,000 internally displaced Israelis who cannot return to their homes because they face the constant threat of attacks from Hezbollah out of Lebanon. And that's going to have to be dealt with. And that's an impending crisis that I think is looming, but it's very real. Also not spoken, and again, I don't mean to make this partisan, because I think one of the benefits that the U.S.-Israeli relationship has had up to this point anyways is strong bipartisan support. But anytime there is friction in the U.S.-Israeli relationship, anytime our political leaders decide that in order to appease some radical left-wing pro-Hamas element, they are going to create friction in the relationship with Israel, you are undermining the deterrence of Israel's enemies. The way that is perceived in Tehran, the way that is perceived by Hezbollah, the way that is perceived by the Houthis, the way that is perceived by Hamas is we can now do things to Israel and America will not respond. Not just directly militarily, but America may not even be there to help Israel. And so, God forbid, but if the moment arrives where Israel faces a multi-pronged attack, not just by Iran, but by their agents in Syria and in Iraq, by the Houthis, by Hezbollah, all at once, perhaps in retribution for a recent strike, perhaps in a future conflict, Iran is closer to that happening and coordinating that because they believe that they can do it. And that the U.S., because of our internal friction with regards to the U.S.-Israeli relationship, will not respond. That's a very real threat, and I hope I'm wrong, but we may not see the end of next week without something like that potentially happening. And if it does, you will remember that that deterrence was lost and undermined by this desire to appease this radical element of a voting base, as a result encouraged and undermined deterrence and encouraged Israel's enemies to believe they could get away with such an attack. So it's a difficult time in the world. It's a difficult time in our own country in many respects. I think we are still blessed to have the freedoms that we do, to be able to gather in a place like this today and speak openly about these things, and it's our obligation. At the end, I always tell people my job is not to make things perfect. There are limits to what government can do. Governments can't raise children. Governments can't teach values to people. We can try to model it the best we can in our role. But our number one obligation is to keep America safe from its enemies and our people safe from our enemies and those who seek to harm us. Embedded in that is an obligation to help our friends who share common enemies with us. And the second is the well-being and the common good of the American people, whether that's economic or social, to promote all of that. I've never promised or believed that my votes in the Senate or my service in government could ever guarantee a world that will be perfect. That's not my job. Our job is to make things better, to see opportunities where we can make improvement and make those things better. And ultimately to remember every single day that we are the caretakers, we are the inheritors of the single greatest nation and society that mankind has ever known. With all the problems we have, if you asked me, I could live at any time in any place, I would choose to be a 21st century American. We are still that. And our job is to protect that. And my job, not just as a senator, but as an American, and the job of everyone in this room, is to do everything we can to ensure that 20 or 30 years from now, our children and grandchildren can say the same thing. That they too would rather live in no place at no other time in history than in the United States of America. So we have work to do, and I'm honored to do it on your behalf, and I apologize for the shortness of it. We have to vote on a judge from somewhere, a Utah judge. So there you go. And but I appreciate the time you've given me. Thank you so much. Thank you.